So this video is a kind of follow-up to the last couple I made, like playlist maintenance and cutting double albums in half. They got kind of similar topics, and I'm showing off my CD collection more. Consider this a companion piece to those videos. I stole that term from A Social Reckoning. The only reason it's not a straight-up sequel to Social Network is because Jesse Eisenberg doesn't want to be Zuck anymore, so they had to recast him. The new guy looks good, though. Here's how this all started. Last month, my phone died while I was on vacation. It wasn't charging anymore, so I caved and got a new phone. It's fine, you know, I try not to use it too much. Getting the phone itself wasn't the problem, it was the Bluetooth. For some reason, my new phone wouldn't connect to anything via Bluetooth, and nothing would connect to it. The Bluetooth menu would still recognize other devices, it just wouldn't connect to save its life. I'm sure there's a logical explanation for that, like maybe it just needed an update or something. But I think we can all agree Bluetooth just doesn't work sometimes. You can have the tightest connection, newest gadgets, the perfect recipe for a good Bluetooth experience, and then it just goes no cooperation mode. I also can't do Apple CarPlay or whatever fancy thing that puts my phone on the car's monitor. My theory is because my new phone is USB-C and doesn't use that old proprietary Apple charger, you know, the one everyone's got the same crack on. It still charges when I plug it into my car, but nothing shows up on the monitor, so I can't do music like that either. I even tried raw dogging it and playing music straight off my phone. That lasted 5 minutes at most, cause wow, iPhone speakers are ass. Suffice to say, I was in a pickle. Everyone needs music or something to listen to when they drive. It's the one thing that makes car trips tolerable. Then I had an epiphany. I remembered my car has a CD player. I got a funny history with CDs. Back when I was a teenager, I was super into collecting all sorts of crap. Highway signs, old video games, and especially music. This was a couple years before physical media was a whole thing. I'd get them from old record stores, garage sales, thrifting, and usually I'd either download them onto my iPod at the time or play them directly from my laptop through a USB CD drive. That's probably the dweebiest thing anyone could do ever, but for a while, that's how I listen to music.
This thing's broken, by the way. It's ticking right now. Listen to this.
I was a crazy late bloomer with streaming, you know. I used Pandora and Apple Music a bit during high school, but no Spotify till college because of that sweet student discount that came with Hulu. I'm sure there's gonna be some music purists that'll argue CDs are the superior way to listen to and appreciate music, not just in terms of listening to a physical thing versus streaming, but also the act of listening to an album in its entirety over something like a playlist. I'd argue albums can give a more enriching and immersive experience compared to playlists, but of course that depends on what albums and playlists we're talking about. Trust me, I know a thing or two about good playlists. But when it comes to choosing between albums and playlists, it really just depends on the mood or occasion. Like if I'm doing chores or driving, I'll usually spring for an album. But if I got aux at a party or hanging with friends, I'll go for playlists with music everyone vibes to. There's exceptions to this, of course, but it's good to know what works for the situation. Like some albums are dynamic and have slow songs, fast songs, happy songs, sad songs, and those aren't the best to play in a group setting because it kills the mood. Like when I listen to Blood Sugar Sex Magic with friends, we'll always skip I Coulda Lied. Not because it's a bad song, it's just the one sad melodic song in an ocean of sexy funky songs. I also just like to shake it up sometimes. You know, I'm not trying to flex, but with how much music I listen to, I gotta try new things. Listening to bands I never heard before, discovering genres I never knew existed, and the method I go about listening to music. This sounds tacky, but variety is the spice of life. If I'm doing the same thing over and over again, I'm like French fries without salt or pepper. Now I'm sure some of you might be thinking, oh, does that also apply to other physical forms of music like vinyl? Respectfully, no. I don't hate vinyl as much as I make it seem. I just think it's kind of performative. I know in reality anything can be labeled as performative nowadays, but I do think there's more of a stereotype for people who collect vinyl compared to any other format. Like you think the dichotomy is crazy guy has a sick Laserdisc collection. I also hate too how careful I gotta be with actually putting a vinyl on. Don't worry, I know how to properly handle them. I've seen the video of Keith Moore scolding Nardwuar, but anytime I put the needle down, it feels like I'm doing goddamn surgery with how nerve-wracking that shit is. I'm like, easy, careful. But what about cassettes? No one's asking. I got one of these for shits and giggles, but I don't have any equipment to play these, and from my experience, cassettes just sound like ass. Also, neither of these formats are supported by my car, unlike CDs. Again, the whole reason I started using these things again is because Bluetooth shit the bed with my new phone. But after a bit, I developed a system that fixes problems, or more like minor annoyances I had with using my phone for everything. Directions, music. Instead of using Bluetooth, now I use CDs for music and have directions play directly from my phone whenever I'm on a big car trip. This way, I got separate volume controls for both of these. Before, when everything came from my phone over Bluetooth, Google Maps would do this thing where anytime it gave a new direction, it lowered whatever audio was playing behind it in half. I get why they did that, so you can actually hear where you're going. And to be honest, it's not that annoying when I'm on a highway and taking an exit every 15 minutes. But if I'm in a town and making turns every stop sign, I can barely hear anything with how much the volume fluctuates. Plus, there have been times where I can't hear the directions, so I'll turn up the volume. But again, since both audio sources share the same control, when my music comes back in, it's way louder than before. It's like in a movie when characters are talking at a whisper, and the next scene's got an ear-piercing explosion that's even louder now. That's a very specific problem only anally retentive freaks like me would care about, but this method fixes it. Now anytime I gotta pay attention to directions, I can lower my music to a comfortable level and not have to freak about my audio mixing abilities. But something weird my car does, or more like doesn't, is show the song names when I'm playing a CD. Sometimes it'll show the artist name or the album name, but never the song name. I don't know why it does that, but I wish it didn't. So if anybody knows what's going on, please let me know. I got a 2019 Subaru Impreza, the most bland-ass sedan ever. Don't make fun of me, it's a great car. Besides that, I love using CDs. I always keep a shoebox full of them in my car and rotate them out every couple weeks. And having a smaller pool of choices like this helps tremendously with a problem I know we've all experienced with music: decision paralysis. Not to be the "we live in an era" guy, but we live in a time where almost all music is readily available at our fingertips. Which in a lot of ways is cool, because now anyone can discover any type of band or niche subgenre. You want to hear an Indian metal band like Bloodywood? Now's the perfect time. This can turn into a whole other conversation about how readily available music as a whole should or shouldn't be, but one problem I've experienced with having this many choices, sometimes it's hard choosing what I want to listen to. There's so much music coming out nowadays or making comebacks, it's impossible for relatively normal people like me to keep up. So I'm either listening to a bunch of new stuff only once, or the same 5 artists for the billionth time. Limiting myself to a smaller selection like this definitely helps me be more decisive. Not to say I don't second guess myself sometimes with choosing a CD, but at the very least I'm not doom scrolling for 10 minutes. I'm more like, oh, is it a Funkadelic day or a Tool day? In fact, here's what I got in my car rotation. Crazy Sexy Cool by TLC. This is the one with waterfalls, and for a while that and No Scrubs were the only songs I knew by these guys. This was like $2 at a thrift store, so of course I gotta get that. Even if I know just one song, I'm not skipping on those deals. The soundtrack CD for the 2006 Curious George movie by Jack Johnson. Anyone who didn't grow up with this movie, sorry, your childhood sucks. This thing is so cozy and beautiful. And the music's great too. This is where his song Upside Down comes from. Pornograffiti by Extreme. I'm gonna make a video about this album in the future, but the song More Than Words is on here, and anyone who knows that song knows it's kind of mellow, slow, got acoustic guitar, but the rest of this album is like glam, funky metal, so anyone who bought this thinking everything would sound like More Than Words, sorry, it doesn't. Rubber Soul Live by Soul Live. I've talked about this one before, but this is a jazz fusion cover album of a bunch of Beatles songs like Taxman, Eleanor Rigby, Help, Guitar Gently Weeps. I say it all the time, I'm not that big into the Beatles, so for me to recommend a Beatles cover album, that's gotta mean something. Steppin' Out by Tony Bennett. I forgot why I bought this. Some quote-unquote dad rock like Showbiz by Muse, Tiny Music by STP, Huntin' Party by Linkin Park, Mesmerized by System of a Down. I say dad rock in air quotes because why is this considered dad rock now? I know that refers to millennials who grew up with these bands when they were kids and are dads now, but I'm 25, so I grew up with most of these guys too, and this never once clocked to me as old man music. It just clocked as music, because I always considered quote-unquote dad rock to be stuff stuff like Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Pink Floyd. So is that considered like grandpa rock now, or another genre of dad rock? Car Button Cloth by the Lemonheads. I mentioned this before, but I got a weird thing for the Lemonheads. And this album's tied with their self-titled one from 2006 as my favorite. But when I listen to this CD in the car, it skips over like half the songs. I don't know if it's because the CD is scratched, it looks fine to me, but since I've heard this album so many times, hearing it skip over If I Could Talk I'd Tell You and the Outdoor Type, it's pretty discombobulating. Simple Things by 07. This is a trippy electronic band from the 2000s. I listened to this album a bit as a teenager. It's good, but I think most of the songs are a couple minutes too long. It's easy to zone out to while you listen to it, but it's good when you're just trying to relax. Torches by Foster the People. This is the one with pumped up kicks, and for a while that was the only song I knew by these guys, like a lot of people. But I foolishly bought this at a Barnes & Noble for 20 bucks. This is a really good album, but paying that much for a CD nowadays is absurd. More on that later. Heavy Weather by Weather Report. I'm a bass player, so of course I love Jaco Pastorius. Anyone who doesn't know what that is, listen to this album and then you'll know. And finally, Time Without Consequence by Alexi Murdoch. I don't know how many of y'all know this guy, but I got into his stuff during my folk phase as a teenager. In fact, I made an extremely pretentious video essay about this guy when I was like 16 and completely ripped off the style of another YouTuber, Captain Christian. He was one of the first to do the video essays with lo-fi hip-hop in the background and crazy stylish editing. Those were the shit back in the late 2010s. I tried to be one of those while I still use Sony Vegas 13. I'm sure that video is still around if you look for it, but in terms of the album itself, it's pretty good. Some of the songs are kind of long, and it's not as good as I remember it being, but it's still like a 7 out of 10. Sadly, I don't know if we'll ever get anything new from this guy again. His last album was in 2011. He was teasing some new music through the mid to late 2010s, but nowadays all he does is repost political shit on social media. If you're gonna be political, you gotta add some music to it. But I can tell stories about these all day. Even for CDs, I don't know why I have. Like, I don't know why I got so many U2 albums. I don't even like U2 that much. I might have just went through a phase and bought a bunch of their CDs to grow my collection. I treat my collection like a decoration. It occupies space, adds personality to my room. CDs themselves are kind of like decorations when you appreciate the whole thing. Not just the music itself, the artwork, the packaging. That's why I argued albums can be more immersive than playlists or streaming earlier. Not saying they can't be immersive, you know, the most immersive thing for an album should be the music itself. But when you open an album and see live pictures of the band or them recording in the studio, it makes the experience more personable. That's something streaming can't replicate, even with those stupid 3-second visualizer GIFs on Spotify. It also feels reassuring to know I actually own this music instead of paying a streaming service for a license to consume it. This point's brought up all the time with physical media. And that's not to say bands haven't pulled their music off platforms for valid reasons before, but anytime I use streaming nowadays, I'm always juggling with the uncertainty that the music I like may not always be available. I don't gotta worry about that with physical media. Unless it breaks, the music is mine until the day I die. Hopefully that's not for a while, so I can get my money's worth out of these. So for anyone that's trying to dip their toes into physical media collection, avoid buying new CDs as much as possible. Like I said with Torches, new ones can be expensive as hell, because all these worms at nerdy media stores know physical media is back in fashion. So they spike up the prices to take advantage of suckers who think they gotta buy everything new. Unless it's a very specific album you can only find new pressings of, I'd always recommend getting them secondhand through thrift stores, flea markets, Goodwill. Those come with their own caveats too, like missing artwork or the CD being scratched, but you can always just pop the CD out of the jewel case and check the quality. You know, I'm not gonna buy something without digging a little deeper. And that's not completely foolproof. Sometimes you'll get shit that doesn't work even if it looks like it should. I bought a Bella Flick and the Flecktone CD a couple weeks ago that seemed to be in good condition, but for some rando ass reason it just didn't work in my car. But I only spent like $5 on this thing. I'm not losing sleep over that. I'd rather spend $5 on an album that's fucked up or doesn't work than 40 on a new one that does. Maybe I'm a cheapskate, but that's just the physical media lifestyle, baby. That's all I got to say on this matter. As always, thank you all very much for watching. Let me know if I got any other physical media connoisseurs out there and what y'all like to collect. DVDs, music, video games, whatever you like to clutter your walls with. Shoutouts, of course, to my patrons, and I'll see y'all next time to talk about good Coldplay albums. See you then.